Mercury stationing direct. This is happening on March 20th. For reference, Mercury has been moving in retrograde motion since February 26th. It entered the pre-shadow February 11th, and I put out a video on my YouTube channel on the 10th, or maybe even in the couple days before, ahead of that pre-shadow, talking about both the pre-shadow and the retrograde, and what a stationing direct signals. And again, this is happening on the 20th, 8 degrees, 29 minutes of Pisces at what a time? 3:33 a.m. That is signaling the start of the final phase of the retrograde because we have pre-shadow, we have retrograde, and then when it goes direct, that means post-shadow begins. I talk about the bell curve. The pre-shadow is the amping up of the energy. The retrograde itself is the most intense. And then the post-retrograde is actually the second most intense, and it's because we have the wind down. So we won't necessarily feel like we're flipping a switch and all of a sudden the day, or yeah, really that day, because in my time zone, it's first thing in the morning. So when I wake up, it's not like, oh, everything's going to be resolved, because we're still technically high up on that bell curve, and there's some days, weeks to go before it fully dissipates and we return to normal. And after that point, we will be going through new degrees of Pisces. I spoke in my previous video on this about how Mercury doesn't like to be in Pisces because it's in detriment and it's in fall. That means it's far away from home, it's highly dysfunctional and agitated. So even though the retrograde is over and it's moving in direct motion, that's great, but it's not happy, whether it's forward motion or in retrograde motion. So it's still not going to be functional. It's just going to be better than what it was doing. Less of the hijinks and hiccups that are signatures of a Mercury retrograde, but it'll still be Mercury moving through a sign that it is not enthusiastic about being in, to say the least. For quick reminder's sake, Mercury, planet of communication, travel, technology. The degrees overall for this pre-shadow through post-shadow period, we have 829 Pisces is the earliest point. So that means that was the start of the pre-shadow. And then it got all the way to the point of the retrograde, which is 2234. And then from the retrograde, what it's doing is it's going back from 22 to 8. So that means that the stationing direct is at 8, but it still has to move to 2234. And once it gets to 2235, yay, now it's out. So that's what's going to be happening over the coming weeks, going through those 16 degrees. Is that right? No, that's not right. How do I do math? 14 degrees. It is going to take Mercury from March 20th to April 9th to get through those 14 degrees. So it is still a few weeks time. And then once we get to April 9th into April 10th, then we're going to be in those remaining degrees. And then, of course, it will keep moving. And it has to do another 7 or so degrees before it finally can get out of Pisces and move into Aries, where it'll be much more content. So that will be on the horizon for April, both of those events. The other thing that I wanted to mention, this moment when Mercury is stationing direct is opening up a little portal for us, one of the very few in 2026, where no planets are moving retrograde. Now, obviously, I still classify this as being in the retrograde cycle, but it's not actually moving in retrograde motion. So all planets effective when Mercury goes direct will be moving in direct motion. Wonderful. We can have some momentum. And that comes to an end on May 6th. So we do have like a decent stretch of time, March 20th to May 6th, where everybody's moving forward. Great. And then on May 6th, Pluto stations retrograde. And then we kind of begin our cycle again of those outer planets as we progress into the year, will kick off their retrograde because they do that every year. So we will have a little bit of a quote reprieve. So I am optimistic that this will be helpful given all of the changes and adjustments, switching of signs, all of the retrogrades, all the overlapping retrogrades. And as you'll hear me explain, also what's happening shortly after this, retrograde free period begins, we have a bunch of Kazimis. So those are great too. We just had a Mercury Kazimi, and now we're going to have Kazimis with some other planets. So fingers crossed here that we have a stretch that's going to be supportive, if not just at least enlightening in some capacity, so that we can figure out like where to go next, what to do next, how to process everything that has been transpiring. So I have been feeling this way. I don't know if anyone else has, but like I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel here with how crazy the first few months has been, because March is really that transition point. We're getting out of the eclipse portal. We have multiple planets now that have switched signs and are going to be locking into those signs, namely Neptune and Saturn. We'll be talking about this retrograde coming to an end, just lots of movement, but then some settling. And then it's like we'll have a little bit of peace, if you will, even though the signatures aren't necessarily peaceful, but we'll have something that resembles stability in the current climate for just a little bit of a stretch of time, and then everything will kind of lock into place, and it will be less erratic. I think that's a safe way to say it. So yeah, I view this as a hopeful, promising turning point. And so we'll see how this plays out. But yeah, I did want to mention also in the context here that I'm talking about this Mercury stationing direct on March 20th. That is the same day as the astrological new year. So that will be happening in some hours afterwards, but it's in the morning time of that day. And the astrological new year, I will be teaching a class on that on the 18th, a couple days before. But the very shorthand is the astrological new year is when the sun enters Aries. So it'll be a sign over from where this event is happening. So they're not directly related to each other. They can't see each other. They're in aversion. However, we're going to have these two very meaningful events happening on the same day. So we do want to watch out for March 20th. See what happens. More opportunities, new beginnings. You can start the reflection process for how is this retrograde been for me? What are the things that have come up over and over again? What are the technical issues, the communication issues, the unhelpful, unsupportive thought patterns that have come up over and over again? When you have this post shadow, this is the third time, like your third pass at it. So you can make those final corrections, final checks. So expect some repetitions of some of those same patterns, but we're working towards the resolution of them because now we're in direct motion. So just keep that in mind. That's why we don't say like we're totally in the clear when we have the post shadow, because we're still going over those same degrees again.